Arrival at Mount Hope. A year after meeting Frank, I began to feel an unmistakable pull toward a new church on the hill. From the first time I saw the building, something in my spirit called it the flagship, a vessel built to carry a fleet, not just a congregation. I knew that whatever had been stirring in me since 1978 was about to surface again here. Before I ever walked through the doors, a dream confirmed it. In the dream, I was standing on a wide balcony overlooking the sanctuary. Below me, worship rose like wind. On the floor stood an elder, bald, radiant, lifting his hands as light poured from him. When I woke, the image stayed with me. The balcony, the elder, the light. I knew it wasn't random. It was an invitation. The night before my first visit, a great thunderstorm rolled through. I watched this movie called Warlock. It was dark. I was told Satan was angry, and the turmoil kept me awake until about 3 a.m. That Sunday, when I finally entered the sanctuary, it looked exactly as it had in the dream. The same curve of the balcony, even the same elder standing in the same place. That moment sealed my conviction that the Spirit had led me there. Mount Hope wasn't just another stop along my path. It was the next chapter in the unfolding vision. I had arrived at the place where the next revelation would begin. Through those steady, grinding months, the classes, the interviews, the tests of character, the anointing called eternal kingdoms came, not like a single lightning strike, but like oil poured over a head and soaking through to the roots. Mount Hope became the place where the prayer lines met the promise. I had asked God more than once what it meant to have Jesus in my heart. I had asked the question as a child. I asked it again as a man. At Mount Hope, the question was answered not with a lecture, but with touch. Not with a trophy, but with tenderness. During a service, in a quiet moment that would not make the newspapers but would make my life, hands were laid on me and words were spoken that confirmed what the Father had whispered years earlier. Called as a child, chosen as a teenager, anointed now as an adult. The anointing did more than validate my visions. It opened a broader horizon, the eternal kingdoms. Up to then, my visions had felt private, even embarrassing. A child's hallucination, a young man's fantasy. But the anointing translated the private into the public language of the kingdom. The promises I had received were not merely personal blessings, they were patterns of a kingdom reality that presses into this world from another realm. The kingdom I had glimpsed as a child, the hundredfold promise I heard as a teenager, now took on weight. These were not small hopes. They were eternal commitments. There is a paradox in the life of anointed ones. The voice that calls you is often the voice that keeps you humble. Samuel anointed David, and though the anointing made him king, it took many years before he sat on the throne, and he was not immune from failure. Mount Hope's anointing, eternal kingdoms, did not make me untouchable. It made me more responsible. It called me into stewardship of a vision meant to bless many, not merely to gratify one. And so the language of eternity began to thread through my days, not in ethereal platitudes, but in hard decisions, to leave steady work when the Spirit called, to risk reputation over obedience, to carry the loneliness of being known by God more than by people. The anointing did not remove the fight. It changed its shape. Where I once fought for survival, I now fought for the enlargement of a kingdom reality that Christ had already established. Looking back, I see Mount Hope as the key, the place where the private call met public confirmation, where the child's seed and the teenager's vision were baptized by the adult's anointing. Frank's role, Samuel, mentor, guardian, prophet, held me steady through that hinge. Without him, I might have run when things got hard. With him, I learned to stand until God moved. This is the work of an anointing eternal kingdoms, grounded in relationship. The oil alone does nothing without hands that lay it on in a spirit that honors it. The eternal kingdoms that were promised in vision were not abstract doctrines to memorize, they became the framework for a life. A life that would go on to feed people, to speak, to heal, to write, not because of my cleverness, but because God had prepared a path, and in the ordinariness of a factory friendship, the Father had given me my Samuel. If someone asked, what did the anointing feel like? It felt like being re-given a name that fit, like a key placed in my hand, like a quiet but unmistakable clarity of mission. It felt like being told through another human being that you are not alone in your calling. And it felt like being launched, not into comfort, but into kingdom work that refuses to be contained by the limits of this world. That anointing, eternal kingdoms at Mount Hope, marked the beginning of the eternal season. It did not mean the journey would be easy, it only meant the path had been confirmed. I would be called, chosen, anointed, and under the watchful care of my Samuel, I would learn to steward what God entrusted to me for the sake of the kingdom.